My name is Cayle Blaxland of McGrath Estate Agents in Wilston, and I proudly use 23rd Street. My team and I have been using 23rd Street for about 3 or 4 years, so I think you'd probably see that across maybe like 150 to 200 different sort of campaigns with them, so been using them for quite a long time. I was actually connected with 23rd Street through our McGrath network. I think we had sort of seen the team sort of speak at one of our Kickstart events or one of our sort of McGrath sort of in-house sort of promotions, so to speak. And I'd sort of been aware of him just through social media and also seeing what other particular clients like they work with. And naturally, when you sort of align with some pretty heavy hitters within the industry, not just within Brisbane, but throughout Australia, there's probably a little bit of trust that gets built through association with that as well. And then we sort of made contact with them, and the thing that probably surprised me the most is that, you know, quite literally the leader of the company is the person that has always been like my main point of contact, which is really, really cool. Look, I think there's always so many different offerings out there, like in the digital sort of space for promotions for properties and also agents as well. I think there's a lot of providers who really say all the right things from the get-go, but when it actually comes to reporting and when it comes to like the actual ROI on what your client or even what you as the agent are spending, I've always found 23rd Street and Bailey's team to produce way higher results. And they've done so in a really consistent fashion of how they report to me. I am a bit of a natural sort of cynic, so I always sort of assume the worst, and then when I sort of get proven wrong, and that happens time and time again, like that's something that sort of, for me, builds like the ultimate loyalty. So I felt like 23rd Street have always been far outweighing to be a more effective agency than others that I've worked with in the past. Yeah, I think like normally, like there's a lot of different like promotional avenues that you can go within the real estate industry, and once you've sort of been, bitten once or twice or sort of invested significantly, both your clients and yourself as an agent, you're always going to have a little bit of hesitation around like how effective is a new provider going to be. Fortunately, with 23rd Street, we always found that like that ROI was there really quickly, and any type of hesitation that I had to continue using them was negated by just the results that were coming through really, really quickly. The thing that I probably noticed the biggest impact on was like my own personal, like Facebook and Instagram were having so many random people that I've never spoken to or I've never sort of come into contact with that were engaging with the content that we were posting. So, and that looked like tagging their spouse or their friend or their sister. And like when you have that on like 20 or 30 different times on Facebook, or you can see how many people have viewed your particular advert for your listing for your clients, and it's like in the thousands. Like you might normally get an engagement of here, but then you're getting like this on the tail end of what is a fairly small investment in the grand scheme of things. So like if you've got a marketing campaign of the better half of $5,000 or $6,000 at a minimum, you might, if you're lucky, get around like the 5,000 views mark, and that's to your page on realestate.com, for example. With most of our social media ads that we run for our properties, we really average around the 40,000 mark, and I've seen it as high as 150,000, depending on how exciting the property's been. So it's a huge, huge benefit and massive. I think, I want to say it's not, I don't want to say it's a secret weapon anymore, but it's sort of a necessary evil, and that this particular company just makes it very easy to capitalize on that, and it's easy to differentiate between other agents as well. Look, the results are phenomenal. Like anyone who says they're not are either lying or they don't understand what they're actually looking at. You can't knock them for producing good quality numbers when it comes to reporting and also the analytics behind the people that are actually consuming that ad. My experience with 23rd Street and Bailey and Mia as well has been really, in one word, like exceptionally responsive. You don't get that with most businesses. They're more responsive than Uber in most instances, I found. So, and if they've not been able to sort of take a call or an email, like they come back to you literally as soon as you possibly can. And in an industry that sort of demands sort of excellence, especially for their marketing sort of avenues, I think that they do a phenomenal job. Look, I think there's still always going to be a normal pushback with the older generations to social media. The irony is the most people who probably engage with the social media ads are probably between like 30 and 65. So in a way, they're the target audience for the buyer, but they're also the target audience that, people just like them are the ones who are actually consuming that ad who may not be on realestate.com or Domain. So I think if you're able to really show, and I would personally go and invest one particular campaign if someone hasn't done it of your own money, it's always going to be a bit of a risk. But if you can genuinely see, hey, this is how many people the ads reached, this is how many people have clicked on the listing, they're both men or women, this is how many times they've actually sort of gone back to that particular ad, you cannot sit in front of a seller and say that's not going to benefit them. It's impossible, because yes, that may not necessarily produce your buyer, but it might have produced your buyer's sister or their uncle that tagged you or sent you the property. Like at the end of the day, you have no idea where your buyer is coming from. They might even just be the underbidder that pushed that other particular person up to that level that your seller was thrilled to sell for. It's all a part of the process, and with a property campaign, in my opinion, it's to try and get it to as many people as you possibly can, both buyers, passive buyers, and even the general audience, because that might just be an extra person at your open home that put the pressure on the other person to make an offer. You just don't know. There are so many options that could happen. So that's why we do it, and anyone else who can't convince a seller of that maybe just needs to try it for themselves. Look, I feel like you will get out of it what you almost are asking for. There's been particular campaigns that we've really wanted to make sure we've drilled down on creating lookalike audiences and giving buyer data from previous campaigns that we've worked with to say, hey, we want to create a particular audience that looks like these people. If you're doing that and you're engaging with them and you're telling them what you want to get out of it or where you want to sponsor or target, you're going to get, hopefully, I would think from my experience, the exact same sort of results that I've seen, where they are responsive to what you're saying. They try and understand what suburbs and what areas you're trying to target. Is there a local school, or is there a particular park that people like to go to? Whatever it is, they're usually quite responsive and will give criticism around, well, that's actually not going to work. This is probably something that they would do instead. But even just on a day-to-day sort of feedback on how you're operating your Facebook and Instagram, because they change the rules so often, right? So it's like, well, you might as well try and speak to people who know what they're doing and have them sort of on your team, because if you're not really taking that seriously, I can guarantee you there's a lot of other people that are, and they're probably your competition. It's probably a bit of a combination of two or three. The communication level I find is really, really high. They don't waffle, they're to the point. I feel like there's some agencies who I've worked with in the past who just sort of tell you what you want to hear. And if you're someone who sort of speaks to people 100 times a day, like you hear very quickly what someone's sort of giving you a narrative, or they're actually just telling you exactly like what their expertise is and trying to help you with it. That's one of the biggest differentiators that I've found. It's very easy just to pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, I'm actually having a really interesting thought about this. What do you think? This is the people I'm trying to attract. How can we do that? I feel like the communication, the probably specialization if you request it, and the consistency is probably what I've been most impressed with. Look, selfishly, I want Bailey and 23rd Street all to myself. I know that's obviously not the case. I don't know how they sort of service the amount of and quality of clientele that they have, but if you are genuinely on the fence, again, I think that you should personally take like a bit of a punt and give it a go, be it with either VPA or your own money, if you want to try and sort of put your own skin in the game. Worst case scenario, you've sort of crossed it off the list. Best case scenario, you have a partnership for life.